What's going on, guys? Welcome to another Strong Life podcast slash videocast. So these are live Instagram. I think I'm getting Matt Wenning on this one. And then what I'm figuring out how to do is pull the audio from this. So I saw Matt popped on. So Matt, if you could request to join, here we go, buddy. What's up, guys? Waiting for my man Matt. Here we go. Hang tight, guys. And for those of you listening, coming through Instagram, Matt, what's up?
What's up, man?
I'm super excited, my man. This is going to be great. So everybody's starting to tune in now. And I've been able to actually pull the audio from this. You need a plug-in to Google Chrome, and it allows you to download the audio. And if you have a tech guy, it downloads the video without the audio. They have to merge them together. So I just downloaded the audio. My fear is if I touch the wrong button, I'll like send a rocket ship to space.
Yeah, it can be complex sometimes, for sure.
That's right. So, first off, I've been, for a long time following you, and now with, you putting out a lot more content, I've really been learning so much from you, from the podcast to those videos. And one of the big things I've done for myself and also the athletes I work with is you've been big on like doing all those small exercises for high reps to build up volume. So even just I have this new group of kids, and the one little thing we do is 3 sets of pull downs and push downs with bands during that warm up. Then they do it again throughout, and at the end they're probably doing 150 reps of each. And you see these 8th graders getting big shoulders and big arms, and we just sneak it in that they don't know. They don't even realize how much they're getting from it. And on my end, I had a shoulder scope 2 years ago. It was giving me problems really since high school. And then I tore my rotator cuff during a wrestling match in my mid-20s. I had a lot of injuries to this left shoulder probably since I was like 15. And I had the surgery 2 years ago. Then the summer after, I felt something like explode in the shoulder, just light benching. And, I was so tempted in my brain. I was like, holy crap, something exploded. The labrum exploded. Something happened. I'm going to have to get surgery. But, from listening to you, I started doing a lot of bodybuilding work on my limbs, a lot of high rep tricep extensions from all angles, band extensions, all kinds of pull aparts, even heavy pull aparts with the light band, the one that's about that thick. And today I even went overhead with some of the kettlebells, which I haven't done for probably, easily 3 years. And it's amazing. Like, I think we're so quick to be like, oh, we got to get this. But I always feel like my injuries made me better. So, first off, so much thanks to you. You really inspired me and educated me to build the area. And I guess the body figures out a way to make it work without always getting a surgery.
Yeah, I think that warm up, there's a multitude of things it does, but I think the big 2 things is that if you're doing the right exercises, isolating the right areas, you're making sure that your motor patterns get better. And then 2, you're increasing muscle mass, like what you're experiencing with your lighter athletes. And then 3, you're actually potentiating those muscle groups into play more when you get to the core lift. So what I find is if I do a lot of tricep extensions, rear delts, and lats before I press heavy, that all those muscles end up doing a better job during the main movement. And then over time, not only are you building muscle mass and making your technique better, you're actually able to lift more weight. So what I found is like guys at our level what happens is as you get stronger and stronger, your intensity of your exercises go up, but your volume actually decreases over the years. And you actually increase the volume to make sure that the muscles keep staying hypertrophied and the ligaments and tendons stay super strong to keep you injury resilient. So volume plays a key role in all those areas. And I just actually stumbled across it by accident. It's probably 2013. I started switching everything over to raw, and I had a monster, close to 800-pound raw squat. The world record was only 826 at the time. And I had a 600 raw bench. And what I realized was after I squatted, I didn't have that energy to bench that weight anymore. I was too tired.
Yeah.
So increasing the amount of warm-ups I was doing on my belt squat machine and a couple other key things, I started building up 100 reps of belt squats. I'm thinking, well, if I can be more conditioned, by the time I get done squatting, I'll have enough energy to bench. So, sure enough, 2014, I do my second raw meet, squat the world record, and then bench 606 easily. So that was at that time one of the highest subtotals ever done. It was an 832 squat and a 606 bench at the same meet. So I knew I was onto something, and then I just started plugging the pieces of the puzzles together to figure out what was actually changing and what I was actually doing. And that's when I started reading up on potentiation. I started reading up on, ligament and tendon density and muscle hypertrophy. And I started calculating volume because I write down a lot of my workouts that I do. And I started calculating my volume, and from probably age 29 to 33, my workouts were getting harder, but my volume was actually decreasing because I was so central nervous system entwined to the lifts that, I could get up to an 800-pound squat in 4 sets. I didn't need warm-ups.
Right. I remember hearing you on Mark Bell's podcast listening to the jumps you would make in the squat. So like a common lifter, like around my level, would be like add a plate, add a quarter, add a plate, add a quarter. But I remember hearing something like you'd go to 365, then 490, like you were taking about 200-pound jumps.
When I did 850 for 2 reps in November before my meet, getting ready for my last real squat session, I did a 50-kilo plate on each side of the bar for set 1. So that was with a 55-pound squat bar. It was 275. I went 275 set 1 for 3, and then went to 500 for 3. And then went to 661, and then went to 766, and then did my 840 for 2. That was my day.
It's crazy.
Crazy. But, if you do that for 25, it sounds insane, but if you do that stuff for 25 years, if you need all those warm-ups to get to those big lifts, your training's not correct for powerlifting. So I always rushed how fast it took me to get to my big lifts because I never wanted to show up at a meet. At a meet, you never get the advantage of knowing exactly when you're going to lift. So you could show up at the meet, and the meet director's like, hey, we're going to start a half an hour early, or you're not going to be up for 2 hours. I wanted the ability to be able to warm up in 20 minutes and hit a world record lift if I had to. And if I trained that way, I was never at a disadvantage at a meet. So if somebody goes, man, we only got like an hour to get ready. I'm like, dude, an hour? Fuck, that's twice as long as I need. So I treat myself that way for powerlifting.
It's also I try to take that approach to when I train the athletes, to give them that confidence and the know-how of the different styles of training. But hey, you guys might travel, you might have jet lag, you might be in a gym where it's the winter time, but there's a heat wave sometimes comes through, but the heat is blasting in the gym and it's 90 degrees. I don't want you guys to feel like, it's too cold, it's too hot. How do I warm my body? So it's that saying, basically what you're saying is you're not going to rise to the occasion. You're going to fall to the level of your training.
If you have to have a perfect scenario and a perfect environment to do your best, well, you're going to get those about 2 to 3 times in your entire life.
Correct.
So that was a big thing for me with those warm-ups. So once I figured that out, what I realized is that my intensity was very high, but my volume was low. So what I did was I increased all that volume in those warm-ups. And so before I did that 845 squat, I warmed up on the belt squat, so not including the squat warm-ups, which actually worked out really fast. I did 495 on my belt squat machine for 4 sets of 25 before I even started the bar. And what I know that was, I was doing 40 and 50,000 pounds of squat loading before my main lifts in the off season. And what that was doing was making me so conditioned to squat, the squats never even made me sore anymore. I never even got tired. So then I had all this energy to deadlift. I had all this energy to bench. Now, keep in mind that type of work capacity takes 3 to 5 years to build up. So it's not something that comes overnight.
Right.
But I was able to do that. Muscle mass went higher, body fat went down, recovery went up. So what I find is if people have a hard time recovering for their workouts, it's because they haven't done the preparatory, base building to be able to do those type of workouts and not be not pay for them. So what I found is that's the same thought process I have for my tactical athletes, is that they have to be strong at a moment's notice. They got to be able to jump up out of the firehouse, get in the truck, go pick up a 350-pound person and take them to the ER immediately. No warm-ups. They don't get to pick up a fourth grader, then an eighth grader, then a high schooler, and then an overweight person. They got to do it immediately. So not saying that training like that is conducive for what you need all the time, but you need to be able to do it safely. So I find that, if you squat, say 300 pounds, you should be able to get up to that weight in 4 to 5 sets. If it takes you longer than that, then you're relying too much on classic lifting warm-ups. The other issue with that is that those warm-ups have to be more in a traction-based environment. So that's why I kind of designed the bell squat the way I did. It was allow me to get a lot of squat volume in without the spine compression. Because if you look at athletes or tactical people or even general populations, the shoulder, the middle back, and the low back tend to be most of the major issues that a person is going to have to take time off from training. Well, if I put you in that machine, you can do all the leg volume you want all day long, and it's not going to cause any aggravation there. So, a lot of that's just being able to have a lot of volume without increasing the mileage on the body.
It's very cool to see you creating your own equipment because we don't, the first, Russian book I read was Dr. Yessi's Secret of Soviet Sports and Fitness. Now it's Secret of Russian, but I believe that book was written before you and I were born. It was written in the early 70s. I read it in probably 2002, and I was like, wow, what Dr. Yessi's found 30 years ago in the Soviet Union is ahead. And there's photos of them like building equipment for a javelin thrower, and they were making special equipment, and it was like they were finding a way. I thought it was great. One quick question I have is I saw somebody posted it earlier, is they said, well, how do you avoid, those injuries I mentioned with my shoulder? I feel like my shoulder and knee, a lot of that stuff came not so much from lifting, but it was my years of wrestling. And I always say to the wrestlers, I go, hey guys, the human body, the human knee is not meant to be smashed on a mat thousands of times a day. And some guys, I feel it looks like they're just genetically able to handle it. They get a little more longevity out of their body in wrestling. And some guys tend to be a bit more fragile. I definitely think my early training, as a teenager in the 89, 90, 91, there was no such thing as a strength coach that I knew of, and everybody was bodybuilding. So we did a lot of leg extension, leg curl, leg press, and I do see you doing that, but I know from a functionality standpoint, and even with shoulders, like we would do so much volume of shoulder work, and it was a lot of pressing and upright rowing, a lot of stuff that caused impingement.
Yeah, I think it's tough sometimes because I try to post different things and show people a full picture of what I do in the gym, but I earned the right to do leg extension. Sorry. Are you still there?
Yep, I got it.
What I try to tell people is I earned the right to do a lot of that isolated training. I didn't touch a leg extension machine in lower body training until I could squat 1,000 pounds in gear. Until I could squat probably 725, 750 raw. And then I just like, I just want to do some stuff to have my muscles be finished off. I don't use that as my leg training. That's something I do to make sure that if I want to work on my quads, and being what I consider semi-retired now, I mean, I'm still training super hard in the gym. I just don't have a lot of time to compete anymore. I'd like to have a little bit of those finisher muscles that I never really got to train for when I was professionally powerlifting all the time, So does that help to have big calves to lift? No. Does it help to have cut quadriceps to lift? No. Those are the things that I never really got to play with as a younger. So for me to keep the gym fresh and fun, I try to find isolated exercises to kind of work on the fluff muscle, you know, just to dig. But yeah, I mean, you're right. I think the human joint is two things: one, individual, and two, hates pressure in the exact same way all the time. So if you're talking about into the ground wrestling the exact same way constantly, it doesn't like that. It likes variable pressure and variable stimuli. So what I find is my training has different types of exercises weekly, and it can be spaced out upwards of 20 to 40 weeks. So a certain way or type of exercise I use may not be utilized for another 6 months to a year.
How often do you, you know, by following your videos, I know that that's not, you know, the all the details, and I try to emphasize to people, hey, you're catching a glimpse of what we do, you know. But I've noticed, like, when you're squatting, squatting with and without a box, squatting on a box but on the foam, squatting with chains, squatting with banded kettlebells, squatting with a safety bar. So you're squatting with just like a steel pipe, like a metal pipe with banded kettlebells, and it looks like you're, I wonder if, like, you know, just you have such an open mind, man. I wonder if that's a contribution to your strength, meaning you're not discriminating against how to get strong. You're like, hey, all of this gets me strong. And you kind of know how some people are like, hey, listen, West Side only, or hey, I'm a power lifter. So, you know, I saw Malachev a couple years ago in New Jersey, and he said 10 months of the year, squat, bench, deadlift. He goes, 1 month out of the year, I do bodybuilding stuff. Then August is like no lifting. So I was listening to people saying, I think I'm going to do that. You know, it was amazing how people jumped. Hey, that's what I'm going to do. So talk about how often you vary the main lift. Is it 1 week? Do you do a 3-week wave? And what also, not just for yourself, Matt, but you train a variety of people, from powerlifters to all the tactical, and I also see you training seniors. So I'd love to hear, how is Conjugate applied, you know, maybe spend a few minutes on each population.
A lot of variables to that question, but at the base core of it, I vary the exercise weekly, but how the exercise is the real educated guess. And how I do that is, one exercise, tell me what to do the next time. So if I feel unbalanced, or I don't feel like my abs or my transverse abdominis or my lower back stand tight enough when I squat with, let's say a straight bar, right, and straight weight, I'll throw those kettlebells in the next week where it's hyper erratic and making me lock in more of those stabilizers. Then I let that tell me, hey, did I feel a little kinked over on the squat? Did I feel like I wasn't using enough upper back? I throw in the safety bar. Then if I feel like grinding in the middle the week before, I put in bands or chains, and I set them to where the mid ground is going to get really hard. The point is every week is different, but every week is building a block on the week before. So if I feel like my upper back got a little too tired from the kettlebell squats, I throw in the safety bar. Now, if I do the safety bar for 2 weeks, it won't be the same type of tension. It might be straight weight 1 week with a box, and the next week it might be free with a band or chains. So a lot of that is calculated variability. So it's completely different every week, but it's calculated on why I change something. The reason that that's important for powerlifting is because you don't get worn out. You can go heavy every week because the stimulus is different. So that helps powerlifting. How that helps tactical is that they will never pick up a person or a piece of equipment the exact same way on the exact same piece of ground. So they might pick up a person that falls between the toilet and the tub. They might pick up a person that falls between the bed and the nightstand. They might pick up a person that's fell on ice and now they don't have sure footing. The amount of environments are endless, but the point is that if I use the same exercise even for 2-3 weeks straight, that might make them better at the exercise, but it's not generally making them stronger at all angles. So what I find is that style of training or thought pattern over time allows a person to be strong no matter where their footing is, box, no box, band, chain, awkward hand positions, awkward body positions, you know. So what I do is mix that up to where it makes it fun and challenging, but it also keeps burnout away, and then it also keeps wear and tear down because the pressure on the joints is different every week.
Yeah, I'm such a connected to the psychological component of training, because I know that if you, for example, you spoke about like picking somebody up who might fall between the tub and the toilet. A couple weeks ago, I take a toilet out of my bathroom at the gym, and the bathroom is so small, and the thing was very long. It was in one piece, so I had to kind of like round back it like an Atlas stone, and then bring it out and walk it. And I remember just when I approached it, I was like so, confident, because I'm picking up 100 and 150-pound med balls and farmer walking all the time. And then to the flip side of that, imagine if I didn't do it. I'd be second guessing myself. And as you know, if you second guess yourself when you're about to do a max effort, whether it's in the gym or in life, isn't that when a lot of people get hurt? It's like you can't go under a squat bar and say, I don't know if I could do this. You're done, right?
Yeah, it's exactly. So you train for the unexpected and the unthinkable, the variable that's just a question mark. And that's why I think the style of my training is so powerful for athletes and tactical people, is because it's preparing you for multiple environments that you just can't get ready for every day. The body just has to jump up and do it. And that's what I like about the training for me, keeping me fresh. And psychologically, it keeps me from burning out. I'll be 40. I think we're close to the same age. And, I broke my first world record 11 years ago. So, and I kept breaking them every year or other year or whatever for a long time. And the point of that is that I felt like if I wouldn't have had that variability, I probably would have stopped around 28, 29. And not to say if I would have stopped then, I still would have completed more than 99.9% of the population ever would in lifting. But the point of it is that I was able to keep going because my knees were healthy, my back was healthy, my hip joints were healthy. And it's because I was still going heavy every week, but I was going heavy with something different every week.
Yeah.
So I think step back, you have to look at like Milanichev and realize that there's only a handful of dudes like him that can do basic lifts and just keep getting better for 15 years, because he was good in the USAPL when I was good in 2003 and 2. So he's been as good or better longer than me. And the point of that is that there's only a handful of dudes that can take the classic lifts and just fucking ground for 20
years. It's like a personality trait. And I found that, speaking on the conjugate system, I know when Louie's doing a podcast, he tends to talk about, the 3-week wave and then changing the exercise. But even with the athletes I train, I might map out a 3-week wave, and then I find that after the second week, they do want something different. And Alex, he said, what about a beginner, early, intermediate? And what I'll do is the variation is not as advanced as what you're talking about. So I might have 2 weeks of a box squat, maybe 2 weeks of a free squat, 2 weeks of sandbag or sandball or sandbag and kettlebell squats. Then I kind of come back to it. So as long as they're squatting, I feel good. And I think it's hard because
I just know from my experience being around Louis from 99 to 2007 that although we wrote a lot about doing 3-week waves, we never did them.
Correct.
Ever. We did a different exercise every week.
Yes.
So
sometimes
you have to take what people say and how they actually apply it with a grain of salt and figure out that I think a 3-week wave is amazing for accessory work. So you start off, here's what I mean. So I've played with this and got really good results, which is week 1 of the accessory exercises that I pick, okay? I'll do those all for a set of a minute, like maybe multiple sets, but the goal is 1 minute. Then the next round, it'll be till failure. And then the next round will be till failure again, but I'll use a 3-3 or a 5-5 tempo. Yes. So really, I the exercise. But what I've done is made it a little bit progressively harder using a different variable of the exercise, i.e. the tempo, the failure, or any of those things. That's how I look at 3-week waves. But the classic, you don't want to build on it for 3 weeks. You want to peak it and drop it, peak it and drop it. And if you're doing the right exercises, i.e. the exercises that bring about the weakest points of your lift, every time you come back to that lift, whether it be 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, or 20, you should get better every time you touch it.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about too is it's the psychological factor is so big, and it's like your body could do the same exercise, but then you just change it. Like last week when I trained the wrestlers on Friday, we always finish with like circuits of arms and shoulders of the upper body, and we did a 10-8-6-4-2 of just triceps and curls without putting the weights down. Today we did a 5x5 without putting the weights down. But last week I used dumbbells. This week I used kettlebell triceps, kettlebell hammer curls.
Yep.
So it's similar, triceps and curling, but it was like, hey, we're going to switch some, either we switching the tempo, we switch the angle. Last week we did some incline triceps. So
Yep.
I love, how you're, change that up so much. I think the beginners, and I know you could expand on this too, is like beginners and intermediate. Beginner needs less variety. I might vary their rep ranges or their set rep protocol to give them a change, but I'm not going to change the exercise too often. It all goes by feel.
Yeah.
Like you are a master of your body, Matt. You're like, hey, I felt a little weak up top. Attack that area. Sometimes I feel, honestly, Matt, that the, owning an independent gym, like the kids nowadays, they don't get to make the mistake on their own and figure it out. They could always talk. Whereas when I was younger, I'd have to make mistakes and then find a mentor in the gym who was older, the older lifters who would want to share their experience, and kids nowadays, I feel like that's a magical thing in training, and they miss that. So I try to get them, hey, how does that feel? All right, that feels weak. You need to build your back. Or you could even look at somebody physically through their t-shirt and see the mid back is not thick, or the traps aren't thick, or the arms, and then you just attack accordingly.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I would tend to agree that, the beginners need less variety if they're self-trained. So if they don't have a guy like you or me or a handful of other dudes watching them pretty consistently, movements longer. But if I see a beginner and I see that he can't turn his hamstrings on, or he has horrible starting strength in the squat, I'll change the squat the next week to attack the weak point that's not firing. Yep. And you'll actually get better faster than trying to master the exact movement every week. But the problem with the beginner is that they don't know what their weaknesses are, and they think it's as easy as just going in and putting the work in. And that's the hard part. So I find the guys that really know how to train are almost an anomaly, or a very hard hard person to find, because you have to know when to turn the throttle up to 100% and really train hard. And that's what everybody thinks they need. But then you also need the analyzation process of your training to know that you're going the right direction with your efforts. So if your efforts are going in the completely wrong direction, you're wasting a lot of energy on muscle groups or exercises that aren't going to help you one bit.
Yeah.
You're just spending your week. So holding on to that exercise for 3 weeks isn't going to do a whole lot. So the other thing you have to ask yourself too is, are you trying to be a powerlifter, or are you trying to be an athlete, or are you trying to be a fireman? Because those things also change how much you want to specify. So because I'm a powerlifter, I have a very squats in every 3 to 4 weeks when I'm getting ready for a meet. That's not very much, but for me it is. Now, if I was going to train traditional, I'd probably want to have in there, and I was to say more of a beginner, I would have to have a straight bar squat in at least every other week. But if you're highly advanced, you could go up to 5 to 6 weeks without a straight bar squat.
Yep.
As you're squatting, you're still squatting. Yeah. So I've went as long as 3 months without a straight bar, put a straight bar back on my back, and done 700 for 5-6 reps.
Yeah.
And it feels better.
Yeah.
It feels better and stronger than if I was doing straight bar every week.
Beats you up. I know your rep range is also just on your big lifts. I'll see you doing, 5+ reps on a big lift. And it's good to see that. I think it's going to open up a lot of people's minds to saying, wow, there's, many variations of strength. And, there's good people.
Be careful, because you can only do high volume and AMRAPs on big lifts if your technique is flawless. Because what will end up happening is, if you use a big lift for endurance, it will start to degrade form. So what I find is that I don't use AMRAPs unless my forearm can stay completely solid, and the only thing I deal with is fatigue. But what I find is beginner and intermediate lifters, sometimes even advanced lifters, if they use, say, a deadlift for as many reps as possible, by rep 5, they're starting to break form.
Right.
So a lot of Soviet tech.
Yeah, that's not even a lot of reps. And one thing I've seen, you know, people asking in comments, hey, what's a beginner? What's an intermediate? I'll tell you this, you know, here's who somebody is advanced. Like their first and last rep under very heavy weight, 5, 6s, 7s, look great. How do I know a beginner or an intermediate, especially an intermediate? When they get to the grind phase, they will lose technique and try to cheat their way up. But I explain to them, I go, hey guys, you know, you're a wrestler. And if I'm struggling to finish a takedown, do I go into a poor position or do I improve my position to get the takedown?
Yeah.
I go, lifting is like wrestling. So when you're squatting and you're grinding, don't lose the technique.
Yeah.
You fight for technique.
Yeah.
And I find it's like, you're able to just stay very focused. I explain it as make the rep or die. I always say I never saw people dumping a bar during a squat until the internet. I've seen people squatting very heavy in my younger years at these bodybuilder gyms, squatting heavy weights, and they weren't a slave to saying, if we were like, hey, we're gonna do 5 by 5, well, maybe their last set, the 3rd rep was it. They didn't try to go for 4 or 5. So a beginner is sometimes they're too much a slave to what was written on paper, and they don't, you know, like you're saying, you feel this, you feel that. And also, you know, I call that make the rep or die. If you're going to go for the rep, don't fucking give up in the middle right when it grinds, you know?
Yeah. Well, here's my thought pattern between beginner, intermediate, and advanced. It's a thought process, and you can ask a question to figure out. And what I mean by that is, if I take a beginner lifter and he comes out of the bar and I ask him a question on how to lift, he's going to show me physically that he just can't do it. He's going to either say, well, I don't know what happened, or his knees are going to buckle in. That's a beginner. They don't have the connection.
Yes.
The intermediate person will make small technical errors, but they won't know that they're doing it. They go to that, make the lift or not, but they almost go into the horse and the blinder. And the advanced person can focus in when it gets so hard, all they remember is to keep technique perfect.
Correct.
So when I pick up a 400 kilo squat, the first thing my body does is goes completely away from intensity and goes all into technical mode. It's like stage 4 technical mode, knees out, you know, my foot pressure is perfect. Everything starts dialing in like a high level computer. It's not about intensity at that point. It's about making sure the leverage is perfect.
You know, technique is strength. I look at it because I remember in my young years when I would bench press, I didn't understand. Nobody was saying, hey, shoulders locked down, foot drive. I used to do the old school bodybuilder, curl your feet under the bench. And I remember watching, I'm a little older than you, Matt, but watching the Lee Haney workout video. And he had leg drive. You saw him with his feet driving into the ground. And I started driving my legs. And I remember my bench press increased. And I had to learn a lot through just making mistakes. People weren't walking around telling you about these details. And also with wrestling, I explain to guys, I go, guys, you ever see a guy who doesn't look big, but he just beats the other guy up? I go, that's because his technique. And when the better his technique is in wrestling, he's able to use all his leverages. So he is stronger. So I go, same thing with lifting, guys. I go, the technique has to come first because that makes you stronger. So it's all like position. I want to, you know, close out with maybe 1 or 2 questions here, Matt. I love seeing, you know, you're creating a lot. You're writing a lot of books. You're creating equipment. And before we get to that, this is the question. You know, what has been a struggle time in your life? And how did you overcome it? What were some of the things you did to overcome? And that could be business. It could be life. And I like to ask this question because I like the people who watch us to say, hey, those are real motherfuckers. Like they went through a hard time in life and they overcame it. So I'd like to hear something like that happened in your life and how you just said,
Yeah.
You know, I will.
The more detailed version of what you're asking is in my book, because the biggest thing for me writing that book that I wrote, that powerlifting developmental approach book, was basically showing what you're trying to ask. And one of the big things with me was, so at 13, going right before 7th to 8th grade transition, my dad passed away. And I didn't realize how poor I had grew up until I got older and started making money and going, holy shit, my mom was really busting her ass to just keep clothes on us.
Yes.
You know, especially after my dad had passed away. So when that had happened, you know, as a younger 13, 14-year-old kid, you don't know how to deal with those situations. And I had a friend that was a neighborhood friend that I still talk to today. And he was like the star athlete on the teams. And he's like, you know, hey, man, you ought to come and not doing it because my dad had passed away. We're just friends, you know. I don't think you know how to deal with that at that age. He's like, hey, come to the YMCA and work out with me in the summer, and we'll get ready for football. And that transitioned my entire life, because once I went to the Y, I was a big kid. I was in 7th grade. I weighed 175, and, you know, I wasn't fat. I mean, I wasn't muscular by any means, but I wasn't carrying a stomach. And the older guys at the Y, by one of the guys named Tim Smith, was benching 500 pounds raw at 188 pounds body weight. So he was a national caliber lifter at a small town I didn't even know I had access to.
Yeah.
He sees me and he thinks I'm 16 or 17. I'm only 13. And he's like, man, if you stick with this, you're going to be one strong motherfucker, you know? And that started to guide my life. But through that transition point of 13 to 14 was a huge pitfall, and could have went the wrong direction really easy. You know, I was growing up in more of not a very affluent town. You know, my teachers were pushing me towards welding and fabricating and things like that because I was terrible in school. And the lifting is what made me turn it around and start focusing more on school to get into college, get my master's, push for world records. You know, and that was a pivotal time where the worst thing in your life could happen to you, and then it turns into the best thing that could happen to you. By meaning that, you know, with my dad passing away and needing an outlet for some of that energy, I brought it into weight training, and that led me to where I'm at now. So who's to say where I would be if my dad wouldn't have passed away? Maybe I'd be in a better place because I wouldn't have grown up so poor, but maybe I'd be in a worse place because I wouldn't have had that drive. And then, you know, those guys at the gym that were in their 30s, 40s, and 50s that took me under their wing kind of turned into my father figure at that time.
Yeah.
And that's where everything changed, you know. My life, I turned something negative into a positive, and it pushed me to want to be where I'm at now. So
kids miss that now, right? Like I used to train out that was all York equipment, the York isometric rack, the York dumbbells, and there were many guys, you know, truck drivers and all kinds of different guys that would come and lift in their work boots and jeans, but they would guide me. And it was, you know, when I read early West Side barbell articles, Louis would talk about, it's not just Louis coaching, it's all of you guys. Well, it's 8 of you guys coaching the one guy squatting, and now we're missing that. And I you know, it's almost like I feel like the independent gym is wrong, but a lot of, you know, what's interesting, Matt, is like adult men nowadays, I find a lot, if I look around, they're not as fit as, you know, those 80s and 90s when we saw a lot of guys that was normal. They'd do a job, eat dinner, and then they'd go to the YMCA, lift weights, and play pickup basketball, right? So it's,
well, I think a lot of our society, as far as everything's a sit-down job now, you know, 80% of the entire workforce is not manual labor anymore. So the connection to physicality and all that is much more lost. And now kids now, or guys that are younger than us, grew up without gym classes.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that. They grew up without a gym class. They grew up without physical education because those are the first things to get cut to schools.
Yeah. Does Ohio have Ohio's a big hub
I grew up in Indiana and we had gym classes, but I have people that I train that are in their late 20s, mid 20s now that could opt out of gym classes for different stuff in high school, grade school. They don't have physical shit anymore.
What's the state that your gym is located in Ohio, or the town? Where's your gym in Ohio?
It's in Columbus, Ohio, right downtown.
Columbus, Ohio. So because people are going to be listening to this through the podcast,
Yeah.
you know, I see you building a lot of equipment, an inverted leg press, which I used to use when I was at Diamond Gym, which if people never used it, it is crazy on your hamstrings. Like, I guess like at the top, it's just this
your legs up to 90 degrees, it forces that posterior chain to work just as hard as the anterior chain, where I think is a lot of the other ones don't. But the reason that most gyms got rid of them is because they're dangerous. You know, if your foot slips or you do something wrong, that thing's coming straight down on you. On a leg press that's just this way, it's a lot easier to get out of it if something goes wrong. It's not going to guillotine you, you know. But I find that it doesn't have near the advantage to it. So I'm actually going to start making one of those. It's in a prototype model right now. We've been playing with it, getting all the shit straight with it. But
what's your favorite piece of equipment that you've made? Is it your belt squat?
I mean, if you look at sales, we sold over 100 belt squats last year. Carolina Panthers, University of Kansas, the Eagles are looking at buying ones now because they've traded some guys, and the guys say, hey, we want that belt squat machine that we had at the Panthers. A lot of high schools, there's a couple high schools that have 6 and 10 of them because they're teaching the kids how to belt squat before they even teach them how to straight bar squat, and then they take away all the variables, you know, you break it into pieces, which would be ultimate. I mean, if I had a high school kid, he would belt squat for 12, 15 weeks and get proficient at it before he even used the straight bar, because you just segment the lift and teach it from the lower back down. How to sit back, push your knees out, all that. That's a really good one. The Tricep Bench that I designed isn't a new design. It was actually designed off of a Nautilus crunch machine. We had a piece very similar to it at the original Westside Barbell. But the thing I did to it with my biomechanics degree was I changed the angle of how the weights stack on the back so it gets progressively heavier as you lift it, as in the middle to the top of the bench. So I just built it to make my bench stronger and realized this angle is perfect and very hard to replicate with cables or weights. But I would say probably the belt squat has the most versatility as far as you can do rows and deadlifts and all that kind of stuff with it. I'm designing the Generation 5 right now where the handle can pop loose and set it back to where you have no face interference with deadlifting. And then you can also lock back to lean on for bent over rows and it won't move. So you can put a pin in it and it'll lock down so that way it doesn't push forward. Yeah. So just, you know, increasing the designs as they go. But I would say the belt squats made the biggest change and I've had the best feedback. But it's also been on the market the longest. I've been making them for, a
couple years
or 5 years. They've just now taken off. I think once that Tricep Bench takes off and stuff, people will see the real advantages of it too. It's just one of those things, you know how it goes. You have to keep getting it out there and have other people see it and use it and feel it and see what it does. But yeah, I would say the belt squat, but that's not a new design. Hammer Strength's had one out for a long time. The original design I got off of it was off of Bill Crawford at Metal Militia, which you know him.
Because we have a vacation place up in Lake George, and he's out. It's
Adirondack.
Glen. It's like Glen Falls. Adirondack Barbell.
Very close. And so I saw one that he had made up there, and it was really close. And I said, man, make me one and send me down. Well, Crawford wasn't a squatter. He was a bencher. And I asked him, I said, hey, is this going to be strong enough for a 1,200-pound equipped squatter? And he's like, oh, yeah. Well, I load it up. I break the motherfucker in 3 pieces. I mean, I snap it clean in half, about break my
his gym is like, an old school bodybuilding gym, and then there's the back powerlifting room. I don't think I saw the belt squat there.
Yeah, he may not have had it at that time, but when I went up there in 2010, 2010 it was there. That was the last time I went up to Lake George. I did a meet up there, but I saw it at his gym probably in 2008, and that gave me the idea. So he sent me one, and then I broke it to pieces, and then I remade it. And then what I started doing was I started doing calculations and using heavy game scales and figuring out how much it weighed versus the distance. So basically, I took his design and just made it insanely better. Yeah. So it weighed a 55-pound bar, and then if you put 500 pounds on it, it weighed 500 pounds, even with the lever arm. So I changed all the distances and then ultra reinforced it and plugged it into a CAD machine that would show me the stressors and where it needed to be reinforced so it was unbreakable. Now mine will hold well over 1,000 pounds and not even creak. But it took 5 years of cutting it apart, redesigning it, taking this out, putting this in. So the original design came from him, which I'll be forever indebted to him, but we just advanced it from there. And then I've seen other machines like it. I actually tried to run a patent on the bell squat machine, but it's very difficult because Nautilus actually created the first bell squat in 1960.
I don't remember ever seeing a belt squat. Oh, it's on the dip bar, right?
Yeah. Here's what they did, though. So Nautilus designed upwards of, so I had a patent litigation attorney look at the bell squats and dive real deep into them. So that way, if I got a patent for it, I knew it could stand. And what ended up happening is Nautilus had about 12 engineers that used to work for him back in the 60s.
Yep.
And even if they didn't come out with the piece of equipment, they still patented it. So I found that I never saw a Nautilus bell squat ever. But they made one and they patented it, and then it just disappeared. But if you look up patents on bell squats, Nautilus came up with one in 1960. So I find that a lot of people, they get frustrated with, well, somebody else makes this piece of machinery. I'm like, really, in exercise, nothing is new for the last 100 years.
No.
Somebody did that way for us. It's just the art of, do you make it better,
right,
and do you use it in a better way? Is really the real art form that you can have now. But it's like the stuff that we do for conjugate periodization, was made popular over here by Louis, but as you know, by Yesis and Verkhoshansky and Medvedev, that shit was around 30, 40, well, now 50 years ago. So it's just how you use the system is what makes you special, because there is no new system. There's no new periodization. There's no new rep and set schemes. There's nothing new. It's just what makes it special is, do you know when to use it and who to use it on?
Yeah, that is the true art. And I think the toughest thing for coaches in the business is that, especially if you're a strength coach with athletes, is that, parents seeking out, they might see, they might see squat racks, sleds, kettlebells, so they think it's all the same. But I always say, listen, I got a kitchen in my house, and that doesn't make me Martha Stewart, or whoever's like the best chef or whatever. And it's so much how you do it. And I say, if it was all equal, then we would all be benching and squatting like you guys in Ohio, right? If everything was equal, you and I have, we all, a lot of us have this same equipment. We've got, squat racks and bars and all that stuff, but it's not what you're doing, it's how you do it. That's why there's different levels of what people are achieving. It's the coach. Look at say that again.
Go ahead. I see a question on here from Carlos _Medezi, and he's asking me, what's the difference between my belt squat versus the Westside Athletic platform? And mine doesn't have a cable to wear out. That mine is built on a pendulum, and the Westside one's built on a cable. And no matter how well you treat the machine or how well you do it, that cable is always a pain in the ass. It ends up messing up pulleys, fraying cables, and it has a higher maintenance. So that's the one big thing that I hear people call me and say, hey, we'd like one of your belt squat machines because this brand is doing this.
Yep, you don't have cable.
Yep, so that's why. But I think that's a good one for my battery's about to die on my phone.
All right. Well, let's close it out. Everybody who's going to listen to this on iTunes, you could follow Matt at Wenning Strength on social. His website is wenningstrength.com. There's also wenningstrengthmedia.com.
Yeah, well, that's just a flash into the website. That way, that was the guy that does all my download books and DVD.
Good. Well,
so
cool, man.
Get crashed in there, yeah.
This has been awesome. You're the man. This is going to go up on iTunes, and I'll send you this audio. I'll see if I could do the video, but I'll definitely get you the audio. You can post that up however you want, my man.
Cool,
Thanks,
brother.
everybody. Take it easy,
Good to
guys.
see ya.
Thanks, man. Later.
Later, homie.